Hi there RC modelers, and welcome to another build it session in the hangar with the RC Model Geeks. We're doing part 2 of the video today with Rob poised there like a coiled spring ready for action.
Loaded.
Yes, and we're doing the Estrella Sport 50E part 2.
Part 2. So, we're not going to exactly follow the instructions now. The instructions say basically put the tail on, and if you do that, it's a pain in the arse when you come to put in the servos and all the electrics, because you've got a big tail sticking out, and you know you want to be able to rotate the fuselage around and stuff like that. So we're doing it slightly different way. We're going to sort out all the electrics. What we're going to do then is put the electrics into the fuselage, and so you can like follow along and play at home. And we'll see how it goes. We'll try and compare it to what they've got in the PDF manual, but we've lost faith in that after the first page.
Oh yeah.
So we'll just carry on doing what we think's best and see how it comes out.
Sounds good.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in, I think we'll put in the servos. Oh yeah, it's got. So you haven't really seen the fuselage yet, so we'll have a quick look at that as well. Nice long canopy, goes all the way to the cowling. And you've got a spring release hatch to take the canopy off. That catch was a bit stiff on ours, so we had to like wiggle it around and pull that little bit of rubber up because it was like rubbing on the wood. Okay, so yeah, there's the canopy.
Very nice.
Very nice. And then here's the innards of the plane. Of course, nicely branded HobbyKing, their new brand. You can see the joints and stuff there. See what's going on. The servos are going to be mounted back here. So we'll put those in first. Once we've got those in, then we'll move on to doing the engine mount and getting the ESC and stuff sorted out. And okay, well, we'll screw those servos in, and we'll be back with you.
Okay.
So we've put the ferrules through the rubber grommets on the servo. Put them in the right way, of course, like that. And we're going to mount them into the fuselage. Now, the way this layout is, you can't actually get a drill in there to drill the rear holes for your servo screws. So here's a little trick you can do with this plane, is if we flip it upside down like that, we can very quickly drop the servo in there like that and drill from the underside. Once you've drilled the holes for the servos, it's a good idea to just run a little bit of super glue down each hole. Tightens them up, makes the screws grip a lot better. There you go. And the next thing is to screw the servos in. So we'll be back when they're in there.
Okay.
The servos are now screwed in. So what we're going to do now is put on the motor right on the front here, and we'll go through that, and if there's anything funny going on, we'll make a bit of a video about it.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
If it goes through smooth and wonderful, then we won't.
Excellent.
So we'll be back with you in a minute or 5 or 10.
Okay.
Okay, so we have drilled the holes in the bulkhead for the engine mount and basically screwed it together. What you'll see on the firewall there is 4 like laser burnt crosshairs right there, yeah, which you use to line up the centre of the mount. Okay, you can't mount the mount directly in line with those 4 marks, because it'll clash with the mounting hole for the canopy. So you've got to turn it to 45 degrees to get it all to line up. So let's just give you a quick view of that. We've got the blind nuts on the back there. The instructions say to glue those nuts in, but because they're spiked and there's easy access to them, there's really no need to glue them in. You can glue them in if you want. It's just a pain in the arse if you ever want to get them out if they're glued in, you know, if you strip a thread or something like that. There's easy access here to get to them, so really there's no need to glue them in. They're not going to fall out, are they?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll screw the motor onto this and come back to you.
Okay.
We're using a G46 on here. This is the 670 kV version. What we thought we'd do after this is just see if we can get the cowling sorted out, make sure our distances are right, in everything else before we get too carried away. So here's our cowling, here's the fuselage, and we're going to slide that over, and then we've got the prop adapter, and we've also put on the back plate for the spinner.
Right.
Yeah, because that's the critical distance, is the back plate to this cowling. So we'll push it on there and give ourselves a little bit of a gap. We don't want too much of a gap, do we? Okay, so we've come to putting the cowl on to get the alignment right and everything like that, and it's been a nightmare.
Yeah.
The best way we found to do this, to get the gap right, for the spinner to the cowling and everything else, is to have a couple of little bits of wood. We used a bit of off-cut ply. Let's have a quick look and see what thickness this is. This looks like 2mm. Okay, it's 2mm ply, and we just got two small bits of 2mm ply and jammed them in between the spinner and the cowling. Lined the spinner up with the circle on the cowling, jammed the wood in there to give you a space, and just taped it all together so it's lined itself up.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's attached at the moment is really at the front on here. Yeah. Okay, so once the cowling is all on there, we've got to obviously put some screws in to hold it. The instructions tell you to line it all up, line the orange line up basically. So that's pretty much what we've done, and we've measured in 10mm back from the back of the cowling, and we're going to put a screw in here somewhere and a screw in there, and that's gonna hold it. As you can see on this side, the line isn't exactly straight. If we put a ruler down here and line it up with the orange trim, if we do it that side, maybe it might show up slightly better. Yeah, you'll see that, I mean, the orange on the cowling basically goes up a bit. We've played around with it, and this is the best you're going to get. You can either get this looking great and the spinner not lining up with the cowling, or you can have the spinner lining up with the cowling and the colour a little bit out of alignment. And we'd rather have the spinner looking right.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to notice the other bit there. And actually, on the other side, it is actually worse. There's much more of an angle between here and here than on the other side.
Yeah, you can see that.
It's much more obvious if we put this on here. But you know, there's not a lot you can do about it apart from repaint your cowling. So yeah, what we'll do is we will put these screws into there and come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the cowling screwed on. As you can see, we've got a nice gap there, and it's lined up right on the centre of the cowl. Give you an idea of how well the paint lines up with the trim. There's that side. You can see there's a slight angle up here on this side, but you know the points line up. On that side it's slightly worse. I mean the points line up, but you know it's just not the straightest line in the world. But the important thing is that that spinner is pretty nicely lined up on the cowling, which is what you want.
Yeah, lovely.
And not too big a gap there. I'll say she looks nice.
Yeah.
Now the only other issue we've got here is because you've got an overlap of 10mm or so here. The canopy's got to fit under here and then slot in that little gap. You see there's a gap between the plywood bulkhead there and the cowling.
Yeah.
So when you put it on, it can be a little bit awkward for it to go in. But what we found, all you've got to pretty much do is just squeeze the sides of the cowling there, yeah, and she'll hopefully drop in. But you know, it's a bit, there you go, it's a bit jiggery pokery, but it does all go together. So that's what it looks like with the cowling on there, the engine in, the spinner on there. And she doesn't look too bad actually, you know.
Looks alright.
You know, what do you expect for a, what is it, 140 quid in the UK? You know. Cool. So the next thing is we'll take the cowling off, take the motor off front, or take the spinner off, and we'll sort out the mounting of the ESC. We'll also put some super glue down the holes that we drilled for the cowling mounting. The other thing you want to do on the cowling is just make sure that the holes in the cowling itself are slightly bigger than the screw thread, and then you won't get any cracking around the cowling.
Right.
And that's it really. So we'll be back with you when we've had a play with the ESC and see how that mounts.
Okay.
Okay, so we have mounted the ESC into the plane and connected it up to the motor. So we've put bullet connectors on the motor, etc, etc. We're using a 70 amp S-Spec HobbyKing ESC. We've run the wire for the ESC to the receiver underneath there and cable tied it. We're going to put the receiver in the back here. Hopefully, it's going to go underneath. So our receiver is going to go where this throttle servo would have been. So it's going to go in here.
Okay.
So all our leads will quite nicely end up there, and it should be in roughly the right place for the leads from the wing as well. So yeah, that's all in there. So the next thing we'll probably do is drop the push rods in for the rudder and the elevator, and we'll be back with you in a minute.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye. Okay, right, we've put the push rods into the fuselage. We screwed the ball links onto the push rods. They slide quite nicely in there.
Yeah.
And that one's a little bit tighter. We might have a bit of a fettle with that one. Yeah, you can see that's quite stiff, whereas that one's slippery smooth.
Yeah.
Servos are obviously in there. So to get the length, I think the push rods are slightly long. So to get the length of those, we're going to have to do the tail surfaces now.
Yeah.
So we'll do the tail surfaces, and we'll probably show you some of that. Get the tail surfaces probably glued in, and then we can finalise the length of the push rods. Right, so we've started to work on the horizontal stabiliser. We put it into the fuselage and got it all lined up, with the wing. And then we marked off down the side of the fuselage where the horizontal stab went through, the position. So we've done that on both sides. You can see there's a line there and a line there, line there, line there. Then with a sharp knife and a ruler, we've cut away the covering, because this is going to be glued to the fuselage, so we want a good gluing surface. We've allowed sort of a mil and a half inside of where we drew the line, so that when it's all glued together you won't see bare wood, you'll just see covering. Once you've done that, the best thing to do before you stick it all together is run super glue right along this cut line where you've cut the covering. That will make sure that it's stuck down nice and it won't sort of start lifting and stuff like that. And also, if where you've cut the covering you've cut into the wood, it's going to harden that cut back up. So yeah, so we'll run some super glue along the edge here, and we'll get back to you in a minute. We've stuck on the horizontal stab and the vertical fin. We're just waiting for those to go off. We super glued the horizontal stab in there because it's such a tight fit that it's almost impossible to get any other kind of glue in there. And we've epoxied on the vertical fin. The next thing we've got to do is sort out these push rods. So we've got to glue in the hinges for the elevator and the rudder, and glue on the horns for the elevator and the rudder, and then we can sort out all the push rods and stuff like that. So that is going to be another video, because it's taken us pretty much most of the day again mucking around with bits and pieces. So that's going to be part 3. Part 3 should be the last one, and it should be finished and ready to go for the maiden. Fingers crossed if the weather holds out as well, of course. So yeah, watch probably tomorrow for the next video, and it should be done.
Okay,
and we'll see you then.
So it's bye bye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.